Welcome to the Welsh two-day Enduro for 2005. I think this year would be the biggest entry for quite some time, 560 competitors. As usual, the start at the Lakeside Landrind at Wells, and the clerk of the course, Mr. Elwyn Price, quite pleased with the weather. It's fine today, but he thinks it may rain tomorrow. The chairperson again this year is Mrs. Sheila Powell, and of course, as usual, we start with the sidecars. And Eddie Chandler is in charge of the proceedings. From the start, it's only about quarter of an hour to the first special test at the Pistol Farm, Lanier. Simon Bradford and Simon Morgan did the fastest time here, but unfortunately didn't finish the first day. Richard Neville's partner, Peter Williamson, wanted to get off at one time. From Lanier to Beulah, that was check 1, and then check 2 through the Irvine Forest. Bright sunshine, the course fairly dry, there weren't really any major problems. Check 3 at Nanstalwyn, then the water splashes and Strata Florida, and early in the afternoon the riders are back at Abercwmbir. The headlight and number plate on Paul Manning and Roger Tuck's sidecar had taken a bang somewhere. About half of the chairs were clean on the going. Nigel and Richard Smith were looking on good form. That looked a nasty fall, but neither of them were hurt, and they were soon on the move again. Stephen and Hannah Wood were pleased with day 1. They were clean on the going. The runners-up in the Clubman class were Neil and Mark Rowlands from Llanidloes. Just a couple of weeks ago, they'd won the Powys Enduro. Today, the top Clubman riders, Seth Conisher and Colin Solly. The Rowlands brothers beat them on the first test, but then Conisher and Solly were much quicker on the second test. And at the end of the day, the difference was 26 seconds. In the championship class, Seward and Rogers, who were past winners in 1999 and 2000, finished third on day 1. 7 of the championship class were clean on the going. The runners-up were Steve and Ian Barnett from Llangollen. They'd had a disaster a couple of weeks ago at the Powys. They'd run out of fuel. They had also won the Welsh twice in 1998 and 2003. It was Turner and Yelland, the reigning champions in 2004, and they'd also won the Powys a couple of weeks ago, and they won the first day here at the Welsh. They had a lead of just 12 seconds over the Barnetts and 17 seconds over Seward and Rogers. Nearly 150 riders in the sportsman class, and because of the dry conditions, quite a few of them went clean on the first day. There was some interesting going at Abercwmbir. A lot of work had been done in this forest. But there were still 1 or 2 tree stumps that perhaps should have been moved. I don't think Mark Ensor saw that one. 89. The runner-up in the sportsman class was number 168, Richard Kay from Winchester. He was riding a KTM 300. And the winner on day 1, another KTM rider, number 113, Mick Kendall from Ingleton. There were just 5 seconds between the top 2. There were nearly 300 Clubman riders, and quite a few of them on 4 strokes this year. And this little corner in the Irvine Forest caused 1 or 2 problems. The That was Gary Milburn from Newcastle. Neil Ogden didn't get it quite right. There were the usual ruts in places, but because of the dry conditions, not much of a problem this year. Back at Abercromby, parts of the course were quite dusty. Local man Nick Evans was in quite a hurry. And perhaps Paul Kingston was going too quick. He landed head first in the brash, but he was okay. Stuart Bunton was used to 10-foot gateways, but this one was only 8 foot. Number 307, Peter Morris from Oswestry, finished third overall in the Clubman class. He was in the open section. The runner-up was the police officer from Caerphilly, Hugh Watkins. At check 8 at Wenelt Bank, Hugh was getting ready for the test at Abercromby, and he went on to set the fastest time. The top Clubman rider on day one was in the 125cc class, number 192, Ashley Wood. Ashley, one of our up-and-coming riders, he was still under 21. Nearly 90 riders in the expert class. Perhaps the only disappointment this year was that David Knight wasn't here. But there were others to look out for. Finishing in 4th place on day one, the Honda rider from Dorchester, Simon Wakely. In 2003, he'd won the Clubman class. And just 2 seconds ahead of Simon was number 507, Paul Wibley. He was riding a Gas 250. Having a good race on the test with Chris Walton. Runner-up in the expert class on day one was the overall winner in 2003, Edward Jones from Llanidloes. And it was a close finish. He was just 1 second up on Wibley. The Joneses were out in force. Edward's brother Robert was riding, also cousins Dylan and Rowan, and Geraint was here as well. Geraint has won the Welsh 9 times in all. The first time was in 1980, and the last time was in 1993. This year he was eligible for the over 50s, and the magic was still there. Geraint had won the Welsh 9 times, but world champion Paul Edmondson had never won the title. Was it going to be his turn in 2005? Well, he won the first test at Lanier with an 8-second margin. He also won the test at Abercromby, and at the end of the first day he was 17 seconds up on the opposition. Paul was riding a Honda 250 and sponsored by PAR Homes. To make things more interesting, there was a change in the weather on day 2, heavy rain in the morning, and this had been predicted by the clerk of the course. The dry and relatively dusty conditions had soon disappeared, and there was lots of fun on the test at Abercromby. For the top riders in each of the classes, it was a good minute longer out here today. Perhaps the sportsman riders were the unluckiest because it was still raining very heavy when they got here. And they were going down all over the place. That was Sean Rogers from Congleton. These deep ruts were full of water. Julian Chalice nearly made it. Mark Hanchett wasn't too sure which line to try. Ian Ball didn't know where to go, so he bailed out over the tapes. This was a very entertaining spot for the spectators. And it wasn't the only good spot for viewing on the test. I thought Andrew Martin was making good progress, but then he fell off. Nibs Adams nearly overshot the corner. The rain did ease as time went on, but it was still sticky for the experts. And although it was brighter in the afternoon, the test at Lanier was much different to day one. And it was ridden in the reverse direction today. With these sort of conditions, I think it was much easier on three wheels. Stephen and Hannah Wood lost quite a lot of time on day two, but they did get a finish. Anne and John Giles were very late getting to the first test. They didn't finish. Ian Musgrove and Ian Burton had lost 3 minutes on day one, but they were determined to go better on day two. And although they didn't have much time in the morning, they fitted a new back tyre. It certainly paid off, because on the test at Abercrombie they were quicker than day one. All the Clubman riders lost time on this second day, and Musgrove and Burton were only a minute down. Unfortunately, they struggled on the final test at Lanier, taking over 13 minutes, but they did finish third overall in the Clubman class. And of course, they would have done much better if they'd cleaned the first day. Seth Conisher and Colin Solly, they were the winners on day one. And on test times on day two, they should have been the winners yet again. But it was the tough going that really beat them, and they were 3 minutes late. For the 2 days, they still finished comfortably ahead of Musgrove and Burton, but instead of taking the Premier Award, they finished runners-up. It was the brothers from Llanidloes, Neil and Mark Rowlands, who won the second day in the Clubman class. They didn't win either of the special tests, and I think they were about 25 seconds down on Conisher and Solly. And their deficit from day one was another 16 seconds. But whereas Conisher and Solly had lost 3 minutes on the go-in, the Rowlands brothers dropped only 2. And at the end of the 2 days, Neil and Mark beat Conisher and Solly by just 7 seconds. They received their awards from Eddie Chandler. The top 4 in the championship class all managed to go clean on this second day. Seward and Rogers had finished third on day one, and it was a similar result for them on day two. And that was their result for the 2 days, third overall. Times for the sidecars at both special tests were slower today because of the wet conditions. The Barnett brothers were 13 seconds off the leaders at the end of day one, and they put in a cracking test at Lanier. It was just over 9 minutes, and that was 12 seconds quicker than anyone else. And of course they were clean on the going. Unfortunately, though, they had made their mistake in the morning on the test at Abercombe. They spun round and rolled the outfit on a downhill section, and that must have cost them at least 10 seconds. And it was that mistake that really cost them the Welsh this year. At the end of the 2 days, they were 32 seconds up on Seward and Rogers, and runners-up for the meeting. Turner and Yelland had won the first day, and the margin was 13 seconds. They also won the test at Abercombe, beating the Barnetts by 5 seconds. Remember, they won the Welsh last year and also in 2002. They were clean on the going, and when they got to the second test at Lanier, they may have taken things a little easier. They didn't win this second day, that went to the Barnetts, but for the 2 days they were 5 seconds ahead, and that meant that Turner and Yelland had won the Welsh yet again. The Barnett brothers were not only runners-up, but they were also the best Welsh pair. Matt Turner and Gavin Yelland received their trophies from Eddie Chandler. Day 2 was very tough on the sportsman riders, and only a handful went clean. And number 48, Dave Greenough, finished in 4th place overall. A very good result for Dave. He was in the over 50s. Sean Rogers, as we know, had a little trouble on the test at Abercombe. He still had a good time though, 6 minutes and 22 seconds. He didn't manage to go clean on the day though. He dropped 2 minutes on the going, but that was still enough to give him 3rd place overall. He was looking quite tired at the end of the day. Marty Jones from Knighton had finished in the top 10 on day 1, but he was clean on the going on day 2. Like everyone in the sportsman class, he was feeling rather tired when he got to the second test at Lanier in the afternoon. He did get tangled in the tapes, but still did a reasonably good test time of just over 6.5 minutes. Earlier in the morning at Abercombe, he'd made quite a splash on the test. But despite those couple of mistakes, he still finished runner-up in the sportsman class. And from a spectator's point of view, it had been a very entertaining 2 days. Mick Kendall had won the first day, beating the rest of the field by 5 seconds, and he was clean on day 2. But like most people, he made the odd mistake. Even so, he still won both of the tests and took the Premier Award in the sportsman class. Mick received his award from Mr. John Thompson, one of the county councillors. In the clubman class, number 249, Alan Williams from Bilth was the best rider in the over 40s. Hugh Watkins had finished runner-up overall on day 1, but slipped back just a little bit on day 2. He finished 7th overall in the clubman class, and he was the top 4-stroke rider. The top four in the Clubman class were all on 125s, and it was number 190 Neil Allen from Newcastle Emlyn who finished in 4th place. And just 20 seconds ahead of Neil was Tony Penhaligon from Redruth. Although the going was tougher on day 2, most of the Clubman riders still went clean. The runner-up in the Clubman class was number 200 Gareth Rowlands from Landrindod Wells. Gareth, one of our younger riders, only 19 years of age. He was riding a Honda 125. He did make one small mistake on the test at Lanier. He finished the 2 days 40 seconds up on Tony Penhaligon. There was no doubt about the winner in the Clubman class. It was Ashley Wood. He'd won the first day fairly convincingly. And on day 2 he won both of the special tests. So it was young Ashley Wood who took the Premier Award in the Clubman class.
Just 2 words.
We would no doubt be seeing a lot more of this rider. In the expert class, Chris Hockey from Colchester was the top 4-stroke rider. He was riding a Husky 250, and over the 2 days he finished in 9th place overall. Geraint just missed to get in the top 20 of the experts, but he won the over 50s class. This was a class I think that Geraint could go on and win for several years. Riding a Honda 125, Simon Wakely had finished 4th on day 1, and he finished 4th again on day 2. He finished runner-up in the 125 section and was the best rider under 21 years of age. Paul Whibley had finished 3rd on day 1, and it was the same again on day 2. And that consistent riding meant that he was runner-up in the 250s. On this second day, the top 6 places in the expert class were the same as day 1. Edward Jones on the KTM 125, he was runner-up on day 1 and also runner-up on day 2. He finished this second day 9 seconds ahead of Paul Whibley. Edward was the top 125cc rider, and he also won the Adrian Nixon Memorial Shield. ...2005 was going to be the year for Paul Edmondson. I said earlier he'd never won the Welsh. He had a comfortable win on day 1, 17 seconds ahead of Edward Jones. It was much closer on day 2 though, only 5 seconds in it. So at last the world champion Paul Edmondson had finally won the Welsh. To be fair though, he hadn't ridden the event for some time. Back at the pavilion, Edward Jones comes up to receive the Adrian Nixon Memorial Trophy from Sheila Powell. And Paul Edmondson receiving the Welsh Dragon from Ted Bartlett. Well, that was just some of the highlights from the Welsh 2-day during 2005.